นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings. Coming to the end of the year, so in a few days' time it will be Christmas, New Year, or as in Buddhism we say Chris Buddhamas. That's the name Ajahn Chah coined for this festival, particularly for the people from overseas who went to live with him, or stay with him, who might be missing some of the Christmas festivities, New Year festivities from their home country. When staying in the Thai jungle, he created this term Chris Buddhamas to give them a sense of warmth and connection. When you live in a Buddhist country like Thailand, practicing Buddhism on one level is very easy, particularly as a monastic, as a monk or a nun. There's lots of support because people are Buddhist. Large numbers of them are Buddhist. They're very happy to see monks, support monks, gives them happiness, and they see it as part of their Dhamma practice. And that attitude pervades the whole society. So you may have heard currently they have an exhibition set up in the centre of Bangkok near the Royal Palace. They invited one of the tooth relics of the Lord Buddha that's usually kept in a temple in Beijing. It's been brought over and it's on display there in a purpose-built shrine for about over 2 months at this time of year. It's there, so people are going every day. Thousands of people are going to see that relic. There's a very typical event in Thailand, because it's a Buddhist country. If you bring a relic of the Buddha from India, as they did earlier in the year, or from China, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people will go and visit over a period of time. And they're very happy to, because they're Buddhist. And when it's a relic that people believe comes from the Buddha, the body of the Buddha that was cremated, it makes them happy just to go and see the relic, to maybe do some chanting, meditation, circumambulate, holding flowers and so on. Going to temples, seeing monks, offering food to monks, going to visit shrines with Buddha relics makes people happy, because there's a very deep source of faith in people's hearts that pervades the society. In the West it's different. We're, say in Australia or any other European, American or non-Asian country, then there are maybe many Buddhists living there, but it's not as a whole a Buddhist country. So you get a lot less interest in Buddhism, Buddhist shrines, relics, monks, Sangha, all these parts of the establishment in, say, a country like Thailand. They don't bring up the same interest in a country like Australia. Luckily, people are very favourable and kind to Buddhist monastics generally, tolerant of them. But most people don't even understand Buddhism that much, so they don't necessarily feel happy to see a monk. Sometimes they do, but many people just kind of not quite sure. But it's an amazing thing if you have a country like Thailand, a Buddhist country, then to make arrangements for a Buddha a relic of the Lord Buddha to come over, be put on display, which takes a lot of organising, a lot of funds, a lot of effort. That shows you how much faith people do have, how important they find that. You find Buddha relics perhaps around the world in different places. As Buddhist teachings have spread, relics have been taken, stupas, chedis, pagodas have been built in different countries perhaps, but in rather a small scale compared to some of the Buddhist countries like Thailand, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, where they have many stupas and often quite large stupas. Some of them have been there for hundreds of years. Of course, even India itself still has some remnants of the time of the Buddha, although largely the buildings, architecture of Buddhism has been superseded by other religions, but there are still a few notable sites, Buddhist sites, that people go to in large numbers every year to make their pilgrimage to where the Buddha was enlightened, where he passed away, and so on. So if you're in Thailand, say, it's a sign of the strength of the faith of people in the country, if they're still willing to go and want to go, pay respects to a shrine as a relic of the Buddha. And the Buddha himself said it is one of the few things that you can pay respects to after the Buddha's passed into parinibbana. Buddha's no longer with us, but we can build chedis, stupas, and use them to house relics of the Buddha. That's something the Buddha said is appropriate to do. We can also plant Bodhi trees and have Bodhi trees as symbolic reminders of the Buddha as well. Or we build shrines, chedis, to house Buddha relics. So traditionally Buddhists have gone to meditate at shrines and chedis where Buddha relics are housed, and often they find they get a lot of energy doing that. So if you have a relic of the Buddha, especially if it's one that's considered to be a genuine relic of the Buddha that's been venerated maybe literally for thousands of years, when you go and you chant, meditate, or absorb some of the atmosphere, most people feel something. It's not just an intellectual exercise where you go and you're sort of considering, well, is this really a genuine relic of the Buddha? How did it come to be in China? Like, if you know the history of that relic, the one that's on display in Bangkok at the moment, well, after the Buddha's cremation, his ashes and relics of his body were split up amongst the main kings who had faith in the Buddha, who lived in northern India. One or two of the relics were kind of pinched by the devas. So Indra took one up to the heaven realm just to keep, because devas like relics as much as humans, probably more than humans. But one of the Buddha's teeth, there are four main teeth, these incisors or the long teeth at the front, the pointy ones, the top, the bottom, on the right and the left. So one ended up in Sri Lanka, as we know, Kandy. One went up to the heaven realm, one went to a Naga realm. The Nagas like relics of the Buddha, teeth of the Buddha. And then one went to Kandahar, which is now called Afghanistan. But originally Afghanistan was a Buddhist country. Kandahar was a very thriving, successful Buddhist kingdom. And so one of the relics was there. And then the Chinese monk, who's known by a number of different names, sometimes he's known as Tripitaka, sometimes Fashian, a few different names. He came and collected teachings, the Tripitaka, from northern India and from Kandahar, and travelled back to China, and he also received one of the relics of the Buddha, took took it with him, and so it ended up in China. So that's the history, and you could sort of debate the history, but if you go to actually pay respects to a relic, there's more to it than just debating the history and the background of the relic, whether it's a genuine one or not. You also go on the feeling, how does it feel? And many people go and they find, there's a very special feeling. Maybe it stirs something up emotionally. Because part of our faith in the Buddhist teachings is a positive emotion, isn't it? It's an emotional, psychological state, but it's something you feel. It's not just something you think. There's thinking involved as well, but it's also how you feel in the presence of a relic, or sometimes in the presence of a meditation teacher, or what you might consider an enlightened person. Often there's a special feeling, isn't it, when you're in their presence. So this relic seems to inspire people, as does the one in Kandy in Sri Lanka, and then the relics in the various sites in India. Inspires a lot of faith. People go and they meditate and they do chanting, and often they have tears of joy and faith arise, what we call piti and pamoja, joy, happiness at being in the presence of this relic, and it stirs up all these positive emotions and strong confidence, inspiration, enthusiasm for the practice and for following the path of the Buddha. Of course, some people don't feel that. That's, it depends from person to person, but generally the people who feel something are people perhaps who have been Buddhists in previous lives, and when connecting with a relic of the Lord Buddha, it brings something up, stirs them up. And that energy can be used for good, put to good use. So that's why people also like to go and worship at shrines and chedis where the Buddha's relics are, and probably why the Buddha encouraged them to do that, because it gives you or reminds you that the Buddha did exist. The Buddha is not just an imaginative figure from legend or history, but there was a person who was the Buddha. They did become enlightened. They did teach the Dhamma, and there's a connection from that day until now. And we even still have relics left of the Lord Buddha. Of course, you don't need to go to India or China or any other country or Thailand to practice what the Buddha taught. And the place of practice is wherever you are. And this is something that Buddha himself emphasized over and over again. It's more about how you practice and the qualities you're bringing up in your life, the values you're developing, the skillful action you're developing. This is the important thing. Not so much where you are, because as anyone can point out, maybe people live in a Buddhist country but still don't practice Buddhism. They still create a lot of suffering for themselves or others. And people who don't live in a Buddhist country can do a lot of good and practice Buddhism and progress on their path towards enlightenment, even though they're not in a Buddhist country. That's possible. So in the end, it's how you practice, whether you have genuine faith or not, whether you keep your faith and use it as energy to practice, whether you put effort into training your mind to cultivate the kind of qualities that the Buddha encouraged. That's the important question. You don't even have to be in the monastery to practice. People often say, I can only meditate when I'm in the temple. I can only chant when I'm in a temple. I can only do certain things when I'm in the temple. When I'm at home, I can't do any of it. I'm too distracted, or I'm just not in the right state of mind. That may be true, but probably one of the obstacles is not so much the place, it's just an attitude thing, that many people believe I can only practice in the temple, and they keep bringing up that thought when they're at home, so it's as if like they have an excuse not to practice, not to meditate, not to chant, not to keep precepts, not to remember the Buddha when they're at home. Because it just seems so unfamiliar or different when you're at home than when you're in a temple or a monastery. But if you understand what the Buddha was pointing to, I think he seemed to be saying, well, look, wherever you are, you can practice what I teach. So you have to make the best of the conditions you are facing, the situation you're in. So even if you're at home, you have to make your home like the temple, meaning you have to make your mind like it is when you're in the temple. You may even aspire to become a monk or a nun, but you haven't done it yet, you haven't had the opportunity. Maybe you have other commitments, it's just not possible to do it. But if you're not physically dressed or taking on the appearance of a monk or nun, doesn't mean to say mentally you can't develop the same qualities of a monk and nun that you would if you were practicing as a monk or a nun in a temple. You can. That's down to you. We can all practice as a monk in our homes. We say you can ordain your heart, even though the physical body is not ordained. You may not have shaven your head or put robes on, but you can practice in the same way as a monk or a nun at home. Why? Because what monks and nuns practice is nothing different than what we can practice. They don't have special qualities that we don't have. They're not special people. Just ordinary people who happen to have come into the robes through their faith, their commitment. But their raw materials, their body, their mind, their backgrounds are just the same as you and me and everyone. So ordaining your heart is more about commitment to the practice, coming from this faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. That's the important thing. Somebody was saying today, they were talking about people's different views about Sangha in non-Buddhist countries, such as Australia. So I was telling them a story when I first came here. One lady accused me and all other monks, said all monks are just lazy. You're just sitting around waiting for someone to bring you food every day, and you don't do anything useful for society. And your first reaction, you may be tempted to be angry and say, what? How can you say that? That's not fair, that's not right. But also you have to pause and think, well, it's true, isn't it? And what she's saying is true. If you're a monk or a nun and you're lazy, well, yeah, that's wrong, because you are dependent on other people's kindness and you can't take advantage of them. You are here for a purpose in the monastery, you're here to practice. But if you were to be lazy, not practice, not care about your rules, not care about meditation practice, not help out and do things that are useful for the place and the monastery and other people, then yes, you'd be lazy, yes, you wouldn't be a good monk or a nun. So what she was saying wasn't really untrue, but of course that's a reflection you have to bring up every day, not just once. Every day as a monastic you bring up the reflection, well, am I really practicing? Am I committed to this? Am I using my time well? But even in the lay life, you have to do the same. It's the same reflection. How am I spending my time? It's one that Ajahn would talk about all the time. Say, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. What am I doing right now? So when we say the days and nights are endlessly passing, it's just pointing out a simple truth that none of us get younger. Every day we're a day older, and time is running out to practice the Dhamma. It's just a simple truth, even though we often overlook it or forget it. So the days and nights relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time, or what am I doing with my time right now? So if you're being lazy, well, yeah, you're not following what the Buddha taught. You're missing your chance. You're wasting your chance, whether you're a monastic or a layperson. A very simple reflection, but it's one that will help you to bring up some effort and energy and realize, well, the place of practice is right here, right now. Whether you're a monastic or a layperson, doesn't matter. What are you doing right now with your life? Are you on the path to enlightenment or not? We often bring up that reflection, oh, Nibbana, enlightenment, it's so far away, so difficult. It's only for special people who have lots of merit, lots of barami. It's too far away, too difficult. And straight away we undermine our own efforts. But the important thing is not so much the time frame, how long will it take, or I'll never do it this life, it'll be millions of lives before I become enlightened. Well, you can say that, but that's only going to make you give up, isn't it? It's an excuse. Maybe more useful is to reflect, well, am I on the path of practice or not? Doesn't matter how long it will take before I get to my destination, Nibbana, but am I actually on the right destination? That's a more useful reflection, I would say. And that's how monks and nuns have to think. So that's bringing your mind to be like a monk or a nun, even though you may be at home or at work, a layperson. Are you still on the path or not? In the path of dana, sila, bhavana, are you practicing what the Buddha taught, bringing that into your heart, following along or not? Doesn't matter if you don't feel special or you feel like you don't have much merit. Who knows? Some people have more merit than they realize. Some people think they have a lot of merit when maybe they haven't yet developed much. But that doesn't matter. The important thing is, are you on the path or not? Are you practicing correctly according to what the Buddha taught? Sometimes you hear people say, oh, I can't practice the Dhamma because I've got too many defilements. I'm too greedy, too lazy, I'm too angry, I'm too worried, I'm too afraid, I'm too deluded, too caught up in everything, my life is too complicated. All these words, it's too this, it's too that. It really doesn't matter. It's more what you do with yourself, your time, how you treat your mind, how you treat the practice, even if you do have lots of defilements coming up. You're very confused, very angry, very greedy, very selfish. Doesn't matter, it's more how are you dealing with that? Are you using the Dhamma to deal with these things, or just giving up, which again is what we tend to do when we say, oh, it's too hard, too difficult. Then we stop practicing. We lose our faith, lose our commitment, and go further away from the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, or maybe stray off the path. So the important thing is to be developing the right factors of the path, the Noble Eightfold Path. Whether there's a lot of defilements coming up or not, whether it seems like it'll take a long time or not, that doesn't matter. But are you still on the path? How well are you spending your time? Are you cultivating the path or not? So sometimes things like Buddha relics, going to a stupa, a temple, a chedi where they have Buddha relics can be quite helpful. It's just like a little wake-up call, a reminder, there are enlightened beings, and not just the Buddha. Sometimes it's Arahanta relics, enlightened beings relics. It's like at Ajahn Chah's monastery where I was ordained. We have now, Ajahn Chah passed away, we have his chedi, we have his relics enshrined there. You can go and see them, bow in front of them, do some chanting, do some meditation. Anytime you want, within reason. If you have the time, you can travel to that monastery and do that. So Arahant relics are also a useful source of inspiration. Occasionally people even are given some to inspire them in their practice. Sometimes we just go to a shrine where relics are held. Last year I went to Ajahn Chah's monastery for the anniversary of his death, when they have a retreat. And during that period, I took some lay people to a nearby monastery, Lumpur Sao, who was much older than Ajahn Chah. He was actually the teacher of Ajahn Mun, who was the teacher of Ajahn Chah. So he's like considered great granddad of forest monks. He was active and practicing in the first half of the last century, and he died, can't remember, was it 1941 or something like that? He died a long time ago, almost 100 years ago, but he's still remembered. We still have photos of him, we still have a few teachings from him. But his relics are kept in a chedi, in a forest monastery on an island in the middle of the Moon River. It's the main river going through Ubon, the city near where Ajahn Chah lived. And you can go there and you have to get a boat across to that island. And we went and meditated there for quite a while. In the middle of the day, it was very quiet, cool inside the forest, inside the building where his relics were. There was no one else around. And everyone had a very deep, peaceful meditation. So not just the relics of the Buddha, but even relics of an Arahant can be like that. Just inspires you to try maybe that much harder, to settle your mind down, to be mindful of a meditation object like the breath or the recitation of Buddho, Buddho, Buddho. And you can even go into a deep state of samadhi sitting in front of those relics. If you go in really deep, well, you don't even feel your body anymore. Right? The floor of that stupa where the Lumpur Sao's relics are is marble. So if you're just sitting on a marble floor, after a while you're going to get pain in your legs. That's just natural to be expected. But if you keep sitting with faith, with effort, with energy, with mindfulness, and some of the factors of samadhi arise, piti, sukha, and then ekakata, one-pointedness, maybe the pain doesn't bother you anymore. You know it's there, you know your legs hurt a bit, but it doesn't bother you, meaning your mind can accept the pain and just know pain as just pain. But not taking it as me, myself, my pain, just knowing it. So when the mind's not bothered like that, it can go deeper into the practice, maintain stronger mindfulness, maybe even the feelings of the body, the sensation of the body disappear altogether for a while. The mind becomes very bright, happy within itself, just sitting in front of some relics. That's one of the benefits of relics, and the same has happened to me when sitting in front of Ajahn Chah's relics in his chedi at his monastery. Sometimes travel all day to get to the monastery, go and bow to the relics and sit there. It's just remembering the teacher brings up a lot of faith, and then putting effort into the meditation, your mind goes really quiet, very quickly and very easily. The same in India. If you ever go to India, to the Bodhi tree where the Buddha was enlightened, anyone who's been there knows it's a very noisy, busy place. All the Buddhists make it noisy and busy. Yeah. Because most of them are not meditating, they're chanting and talking and wandering around, and there's lots of people trying to sell things to them. It's just a busy place. But you can still go there, even being very tired, and meditate, and because it's at that spot where the Buddha lived and practiced and became enlightened, your mind can develop deep states of samadhi. It's possible. Many people have done this. So sometimes the relics, the shrines, the Bodhi trees, they help. They're not an end in themselves, but they're just like a supportive factor, a supportive condition. But maybe you're at home, you don't have a chance yet to go to such a place. Well, maybe you have a Buddha statue or a picture of Buddha at your home, and you put it up in a corner where you regularly meditate. And that corner becomes your special place, simply through the practice. The teachers even say maybe you get a deva coming to live in the corner of your house where the Buddha statue is, because Buddha statues are often looked after by devas. And there's a certain peaceful presence, peaceful energy in the corner of your room or your house, wherever it may be. Maybe even there's a sort of a certain bright energy there that other people can sense when they go into the house or when they go there and meditate. So you might say these are all just superficial things, but the way the mind develops in the Dhamma practice, there's many different causes and conditions, many different factors which come together to help the path. Factors arise in your mind to help you go further along your path towards enlightenment. Hearing the Dhamma, reciting the Dhamma or chanting, meditating, worshipping at shrines, Buddha statues, places where there are relics, all of these things help. They may not be for everyone, but you've got to ask yourself, whoever it is in this world, what are the causes and conditions for the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path to arise? One of them will be hearing the Dhamma, one of them will be associating with other practitioners, maybe associating with noble ones, and then reflecting on the Dhamma that you've heard, listening to it, and practicing mindfulness, practicing developing samadhi. These are all things we have to keep returning to over and over again, with that reflection. The days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? So often we meditate and we do well for a while, and then we hit a few obstacles, or we feel tired, or we get distracted, we have other things to attend to, so we quit and give up. So people, so often they do some regular meditation practice for a few months, and then they stop, or they go on a retreat and then they stop. So they have this stop-start approach to the practice. But the aim is to keep going, isn't it? Keep going and develop steady, continuous practice. As Luang Por Chah would say, whether you want to do it or whether you don't want to do it, you still do it. Whether you have faith or your faith is fading, you still practice. Your aim is to develop a certain continuity of effort, continuity of practice, continuity in the keeping of precepts, continuity in practicing mindfulness, continuity in reflecting on the Dhammas, noticing the impermanent nature of body and mind. If you keep reflecting on something, observing, contemplating, then you'll see certain aspects of the truth that will keep coming up. Like the changing nature of your own moods and thoughts. Well, if you see your moods change today as you practice mindfulness, well, you'll notice them change tomorrow as well, and the next day. So if you keep practicing mindfulness, you'll see, all these moods and thoughts and memories are impermanent. That's where you get some continuity. It's the insight that sees other things as impermanent. If you bring your attention to the present moment, you're back with this reflection. The days and nights are relentlessly passing. What am I doing right now? Where is my mind right now? Where's my body right now? What am I doing with my mind? Am I cultivating the path right now or not? So maybe I'll leave you with these reflections tonight, and if anyone has any questions after this, we can answer them for you.